Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. I'm Will Dragon, and we are here in Swordland to make this country great once again. We have been pushing through our high-speed railway. We went to the funeral of the man who was brutally murdered, Bernard Circus. We have also been talking about our foreign policies and the people that want to be friends with us. Followed by the fact we also spent money on something else, and I really wish I could remember what it was. The government budget. Can we, what did we go and go? Stimulus checks. We did, yes. We tried to get our economy going by giving checks to the people and not the businesses. Now, we do have some news in Lackavan. The Communist Party of Swordland and the Labour Union of Swordland have set up a picket line in the city. The two organisations, after recently moving to the Gassam HQ in the city, are actively expressing their discontent. The situation is attracting attention, with the impact on the city's daily functioning yet to be determined. The response of the local administration to this development is being keenly observed. Up here in Estord, we have the same. Have begun to protest against Gassam. The protest aimed at voicing concerns of Gassam's activities has drawn significant attention. The CPS and LUS have united their forces, adding to the intensity of the protest. The reaction of the Narbal administration of Gassam to these protests is being closely watched. Do we by any chance have a third one of these? No, we do not. We do have a report coming from up here. Avery. A detained young Swords member in Avery claimed that he has connections to the local government. We have been investigating the truth of his claims, but were not able to find any further leads for now. The investigations will continue. So we do have, of course, in Holsword, we have something that we need to get going. Kantanen Security Pact. USP unveils comprehensive Iotake plan for Rika's infrastructure. In a calculated effort to expand its geopolitical sway, the Kantanen Security Pact, spearheaded by Vice Secretary Chairman Tokezintli Iotake, has unveiled a colossal investment scheme aimed at revolutioning Rika's infrastructure and education sectors. As the continent of Rika emerges as a fresh battleground in the global tug of ideologies, an increasingly number of revolutionaries embracing this socialism indicated a shifting landscape. Okay. That was in Rika, wherever that may be. Can we see that on the map? I don't think that's anywhere on the map at all. So let's go back home. And so in Holsword, Tourism and Cultural Preservation Act, the TCPA bill has been passed by the GNA. Briefing on the results from the Reform Committee, and of course we didn't simply have a report. The Grand National Assembly is preparing the Green Bill, with a focus on promoting sustainable industry practices, particularly in Groony. Section 1 of the Act proposes stricter regulations on industrial pollution and waste disposal. It suggests hefty fines for non-compliance, with the collected revenue to be reinvested in environmental recovery projects. Groony is down here in the bottom of Swordland. We are actually going to quickly spot through the news as well. Remus Holstron criticizes Workers' Rights Bill. Remus Holstron, Deputy of the National Front Party, recently voiced objections to the Workers' Rights Bill, currently in its conceptual phase. His criticism targets the bill's 5th section, which extends the same rights to migrant or undocumented workers as to Swordish citizens. Energy Protection Act repeal process begins. A significant development unfolded in the Grand National Assembly as the process to repeal the Energy Protection Act of 1932 was initiated. This act presently restricting foreign ownership of security-sensitive energy corporations to 20% is now under threat. Emergency in Anrika, Mayor announces. Troubling news are coming from the Mayor of Anrika, who reported that a state of chaos exists in the city, and called an emergency directive authorizing him to use his security powers. In an announcement, Mayor Les said, "We are reporting 20 police officers heavily wounded, 2 police stations burned down, and several shot. In the city, it is in a state of emergency, and we are trying to restore order." The Oregon FP leaders have announced that they will assist the local enforcement with the task of keeping the streets safe by reporting violent dissenters. Okay. Anrika. Go to location. Oh, wow, and that is on the line of our railway. That's never particularly good. Lockdown. That could cause problems. In Swordland today, Alfonso Foundation, a beacon of charity. Today we highlight the efforts of the Alfonso Foundation, a beacon of charity in Swordland. Founded by Edward Alfonso, the third president of Swordland, the foundation has taken strides towards mitigating income inequality and addressing homelessness. I like it. We do have a homeless problem in our country, so I like that. Calling for an open market, repealing the EPA. Oh, trying to get rid of the Energy Protection Act to say we need to go to an open market. Interesting. Addressing the skilled foreign worker gap. The Swordland economy faces a critical challenge. The demand-supply gap for skilled foreign workers with increasing technological advancements. The need for specialized skills is on the rise. However, the inability to attract and retain foreign talent hinders Swordland's potential for economic growth. Unrest continues. Every third person our team has talked to mentioned the need for strengthening the political system that needs to open up and reflect different opinions. Rika, Ezra, and Avery are much more damaged by the unrest. Welfare issues of Narbal. Narbal, a city that was once an important trade stop for the Markian Empire, has been in a steep decline for the last decade. We have uncovered the hard truth from the residents themselves. A shepherd living near the mountains that did not wish to be disclosed his real name has made shocking remarks about the city's and region's lack of healthcare services. He has waited almost 5 months just to get an appointment in the rural region. Narbal, I assume that's all the way over here. Yeah, I understand. I do understand. The radical, we need democracy. Okay. We need, there you go, we need democracy. I'm trying. Energy tensions escalate in Rizia. Les Power, the largest energy corporation of the ATO, member Lesbia, announced an energy deal with Pales over the disputed sea gas field Reyes. Rizia, which has laid claims over these fields, is likely to see an escalation in tensions. The Alliance of Nations. The Kingdom of Rizia. Aha, right. Announced that energy deals with Pales over the distributed. So, Lesbia. Pales, okay. So that's the Grand Duchy of Pales, and so Lesbia is getting involved. And the team is currently leading a diplomatic mission in Welland. Okay, there's a diplomatic mission going on. Military, weak. Relations, neutral. Population, DDP world rank, 29th. Whereas if we come up to somewhere like Kingdom of Rumburg, GDP world ranking 4th. Military, overwhelming. Relations, unfriendly. 18th, not terrible. Military, weak and friendly. Cheap steel imports. As per trade agreement between two countries, Swordland imports Agnolian steel for cheaper than its market value. Should that be allowed to continue? Who knows? Relations neutral. Military strong. 6th. And then we have other people like Rizia. 13th, 40 million, weak and neutral. Okay. Oh, that's an event. 24th, military equivalent. Morella, military equivalent, 17th. Grand Duchy of Pales, 27th, weak and neutral. Although Lesbia we haven't actually looked at yet. Strong, 79 million and 5th. Just, ouch is quite frankly the way to put that one. Okay, anyway, let's go back to the regional map. Let's have a look at Whole Sword. Read the report. Repeal proposal for the Energy Protection Act of 1932. Grand National Assembly of Swordland gathered yesterday for a significant session where a proposal from Friends Richter, the People's Freedom and Justice Party, and supported by the independent MP Mansoon Lek, was put forth to repeal the Energy Protection Act of 1932. The proposal to repeal or modify this law has been a topic of debate in the Assembly, with proponents arguing for an open market approach, and opponents advocating for the protection of Swordland's critical industries from foreign influence. Okay, we'll then head to the Maroon Palace for approval. Tourism and Cultural Preservation Act. The Swordland Tourism and Cultural Preservation Act aims to amplify the cultural allure and tourism viability of Borin, Ribery, Lackavan, Anrika, and Benfey. The Grand National Assembly is calling a collective push to establish Swordland as a global tourist destination and reduce the effects of the recession. Section 1 focuses on the cultural elevation of the cities, identifying local food, drink, music, dance, architecture, and historical sites as unique selling propositions. This cultivation of cultural tourism is positioned as a catalyst for economic invigoration. Section 2 underscores the restoration and preservation of key landmarks in Lackavan and Anrika. Concurrently, it proposes a comprehensive renovation of tourist infrastructure in Benfey to enrich the visitor experience and generate steady income for local communities. Section 2, subsection 1 further commits to the safeguarding and development of the Caves of Antera in Ribery and the vineyards in Boring, recognizing their potential as tourism growth drivers. -1 government budget. Done. Happily sign that one. News Tourism Cultural Preservation Act signed. The signature marks a significant milestone in Swordland's tourism journey, and the Radical. With the signing of the Swordland Act, the Act amplifies the cultural allure, the tourism industry prepares to flourish. This progressive legislation paves the way for economic recovery. Beautiful, beautiful, and beautiful. So I assume this will simply policies, Tourism and Cultural Preservation Act, situations, tourism industry booming nationwide. That will help things out. And so, briefing on the results from the Reform Committee. I came a little early to the meeting room before anybody showed up. We had scheduled a meeting to discuss the progress of the Reform Committee regarding the new constitution. I took a seat on the centre chair in the vacant meeting room as I waited for them to show up. The reforms were slowly becoming the most significant expectation of my government. We would be changing Seoul's constitution of 29. Most people nowadays blamed the constitution for the outstanding problems of the country. On the other hand, the reformists in the assembly had been getting louder about their demands. What I knew for sure was that I needed to do something about this encroaching chaos before it swallowed me. Meanwhile, Lucian, Peter, and Nia had been leading the committee to prepare an initial draft for the constitutional amendments. I was intrigued to hear their results. There was a knock on the door. It was Lucian. Good afternoon, sir. Lucian arrived exactly on the hour mark again. His punctuality could almost be described as obsessive. Good afternoon, Lucian. Took a seat at the table and took out a bunch of documents, spreading them on the long table. We should begin the meeting as soon as Mrs. Morgna and Mr. Vice President arrives. We finally have some results from the Reform Committee. How does it look? Well, the situation is quite complicated, but I'm sure we will make it work, just like we accomplished many things before. We'll go over the details regarding the new constitution in the meeting. A few minutes later, Peter and Nia also arrived. After a short chat, everybody sat down and took out their notes. I knew it was going to be a long meeting. There was a lot to talk about the future of this process. Let us begin to tackle the points of contention. Mr. President, our committee meetings were really fruitful, and we already started working on the constitutional draft together with the reformists. Minister of Justice, yes, I thought that's who I was speaking to. They demanded a little too much, but we've had success with Franz Richter create a realistic draft that could potentially go through the Supreme Court. A little, they demanded to rewrite the whole constitution. Mr. Richter's deputy even suggested removing the term sword from the constitution completely. I also didn't like their theatrics, but the requests were definitely not outrageous. They were just not realistic in today's political circumstances. Nonetheless, Mr. Vice President, thanks for your convincing arguments. We seem to have reached a common ground already. If we can fully reach an agreement with the reformists, we will be very strong in the assembly to propose the change. Can we reach a 2/3 majority? I think so. If you can get Franz Richter to work with you on this, our only problem would be uniting our own party. We'll never be able to get NFP to work with us. We need the majority of our 130 seats in the assembly to vote in favour. With PFJP's full support of 70 votes, we easily surpass the needed 166. But it would be tough to unite the USP with all the divisive wings that have formed. You must make them follow you loyally. Albin Clavin, as reformist wing, would be supporting you. He already weighed in heavily in the committee meetings. However, the Conservatives would be tough to break. The influence of Sol is still living strong in the party. How many votes do they have? The Conservatives have around 40 seats. There are many unaligned people, and some of your loyalists might decide to show their true faces too. So we need as many of the Conservatives to support us, and there is only one person who is key to making them back us. Gloria Tory. She's well respected by the Solists. She'll be our biggest obstacle in the assembly, and her demands will be extensive. I also have reasons to think she might be in Orso's pocket. She will be tough to break, but we'll need her help to get the Conservative support. They are the biggest obstacle. Even if we pass the Assembly, the Chief Justice will do his best to block our amendments. We need at least 6 of the 11 judges to vote for the proposal, but Mr. Hawker has enormous influence over the judges. We should reach out to the judges in secret. Some of them might be willing to break rank to support us. Lucian looks skeptical. Wow. Just causes for justice for just causes. According to the Constitution, I am a member of the Supreme Court, which means we already have 1 vote. 2 of the judges are friends of mine and have similar opinion about the reforms. Consider them with me. Who else would be willing to support the reforms? I think Judge Edmonds can be persuaded, and in extension, Mr. Dalton and Mr. Merton. They weren't really blinded by the Solist ideology. Yes, those 3 don't seem to be working directly with the Chief Justice Hawker. We can get to Isabel Edmonds, we might get the 6 votes needed. That's our best bet. What are the demands? We should run down each of the main demands of the committee and get your input first. Mrs. Morgner can explain them further. We'll start with the first red line. The new constitution will fix the loopholes regarding the president's absolute veto powers. Even though Mr. Richter put on a whole show about why vetoes should completely be removed, the committee has almost unanimously agreed on fixing the loopholes, thus limiting presidential vetoes. My suggestion is to add a clause detailing the methods the Assembly may override a veto with some sort of a super majority. 1 person should never be able to block the rest. Vetoes give the president too much power. Whatever you decide, it's important to get a balanced picture. We will be making history by changing the 29 Constitution of Sol. The second one is about the judiciary. The new constitution will remove the Supreme Court's right to vote on legislation. This is yet another point that was unanimously agreed on by all parties. Tarquin Sol established this rule to protect his 29 Constitution. We all know most of the judges are still his pawns. Constitutional amendments will still be very difficult to accomplish with a reform like this, particularly because we will keep the 2/3 vote system to be able to propose a change. However, the judiciary will not have the final say in the amendments. Why would they support this? Most of them won't. We already talked about my vote and a possible agreement with Isabel, which may change things. Apart from these 2 critical points, they have other major demands. They want to reform the appointment procedures of the ministers. Mr. Richter clarified that the Assembly should have a say in the formation of the Council of Ministers. That is something that a majority in our party also supports. Well, Mr. Richter also talked about abolishing the Member of Honor rights of Tarquin Sol. That gives him absolute immunity and makes him a permanent member of the Assembly. That one is a controversial one. I doubt the USP would like that. Immunity of the justices, the impeachment of the president, limiting the power of presidential decrees. All of this came up during the committee meetings. Yes, reformists expect big reforms, while our faction in the USP are not very keen on pushing changes that are too great. I'd say keeping everything in the middle ground is the safest bet. No need to agitate anyone too much. I agree, let's get the changes small and manageable. As long as we address the main issue, I also agree. Well, regardless of what Mr. Rain decides, we will need to work together to push this agenda. Now we have a better picture of your intentions, sir. I will start reaching out to my contacts to make a draft that works for us. I'll present your input to the committee. In a few months, you will have the draft on your desk to make the final changes yourself. I think this was yet another fruitful meeting, sir. Your service is appreciated. Thank you for the kind words, sir. You can count on us. Yes, Mr. President. I think this is where we'll call it, sir. Have a good day. They left the room. And so with that, we have talked about the reforms coming to the country. Let's have a quick check of what else is just happened. The Mayor of Comiat, Chris Shah, reports that the decision to start the construction on the R1 high-speed railway project caused industrial investors all over the country to invest money in regions near the city. The mayor is hopeful that the completion of the project will result in substantial economic growth in Conriat. The Nature Preservation Foundation is protesting against the remaining coal industry, a significant contributor to Swedish energy. The group is voicing concerns about the environmental impact of the industry. The protest is gaining momentum and drawing attention to the need for sustainable energy alternatives. The future of coal industry operations in Morbel is uncertain. Yikes. Elsewhere in the country, up here in Lenkerg, a private boat nearing Tarquin Sol's mansion on Duro Island prompted the Coast Guard to fire warning shots. Despite the initial alarm, former President Tarquin Sol allowed the boat to approach for a brief conversation. The occurrence has raised questions about the security protocols near the obscure mansion. Details of the conversation remain undisclosed. Oh, really? He's having private conversations with random boats. Interesting, interesting, interesting. Okay, we don't seem to have any external reports showing up. In the news, Minister Manga's Rural Development Vision. Minister of Rural Development, Gus Manga, recently unveiled an ambitious investment plan concept aimed at revitalizing Swordsland's rural economies and ensuring the nation's food sustainability. Dubbed the Gruny Rural Development Investment, the plan envisions judicious resource allocation to invigorate agricultural communities, strengthen food security, and bolster the regional economy of Gruny. Cooperation with Rumberg, an economic imperative. Amidst ongoing geopolitical uncertainties, there's an economic imperative that we can't ignore. The potential of our northern neighbor, Rumberg, known for its large energy economy and access to two leading energy corporations, Rizia's Rizian Oil and Gas Corporation and the Royal Emerald Energy, ripe for collaboration. These energy giants represent not just the possibility of wealth generation, but also a means of diplomatic softening. Job freeze sparks fears for Gasum's financial stability. Uncertain rumors are spreading about Gasum, one of Swordsland's largest corporations. As the company puts a halt on hiring, this unprecedented move, coupled with a lack of usual job openings, has sparked concerns about the company's fiscal stability. WPB protests electoral bill. Growing discontent over the past electoral campaign financial bill, which has excluded public funding for parties that aren't able to enter the Grand National Assembly, has reached a boiling point when all Workers' Party of Bludia officials and members went out in protest around the country. That the WPB lost half of their total party funding, and since they couldn't pass the high election threshold of 10% to enter the Assembly, aren't eligible at all to receive any public election funding for the 1957 elections. We are actively seeking to suppress the political representation in this country. I thought I was doing a good thing, I'm not going to lie. Iotaki Plan, a global perspective. The CSP's Iotaki Plan, an ambitious investment scheme designed to revolutionize Rika's infrastructure and education sectors, has received a mixed response from around the world. Western Mokopa and Northern Xena display skepticism, their concerns rooted in geopolitical maneuvering and ideological clashes. Okay, and in Wholesword, L1 construction plans started by Taurus, including clearing land and transporting equipment. Construction of the railway will be starting in the next months from Wholesword. Meeting with the Chief Justice, also Hawker. Let's play nice. The administration has been working day and night on the overwhelming amount of issues that were facing the country. The department sent several documents which require my signature so they could start working on the new decisions that were taken. After I signed dozens of them, I closed my eyes to relax for a moment. Another long day. Even though I rarely wished to leave the palace for the day, Lucian had earlier told me that Chief Justice wanted to speak with me. We planned to meet in my office in 30 minutes. I waited for him, wondering what subject he would raise. Take a moment to relax. Thousands of shimmering lights in the Wholesword skyline were mesmerizing. Suddenly I heard a knock on the door. It was Lucian. Good evening, sir. Good to see you. Good to see you too, sir. I'm sorry that I couldn't explain the situation to you in detail earlier, sir. The Chief Justice insisted on seeing you this evening. I do not know what he has to say, but it will probably be about the new constitution. He will be coming shortly with Judge Mr. Garcia, I'm sure that I feel like that they should get rid of the Mr. to the meeting. We shouldn't take them lightly. Actions, legislation, and Supreme Court. It doesn't tell me who's... Oh, it does. Heron Garcia, he is an old guard as well. I think he's here to test the waters. I agree, they will probably try to get you to their side. We should knock, knock, knock. Hey, there's actually 3 knocks! I had no idea that was going to happen, folks, I promise. If we open the doors, Chief Justice, also Hawker, and Heron Garcia entered the room. Good evening, Mr. President. It's great to see you. Evening. Welcome, Justice Garcia and Chief Justice Hawker. Good to see you indeed. Also gestured at the sofa in the office. May I? Please. We all took our seats on two opposite sofas and made ourselves comfortable. How were your first couple of months, Mr. President? I hope you're faring well. Thank you. It's been busy, but I'm doing good. It'll only get busier, yet I think you're doing a good job so far. Considering all that's happening around us, with the shootings near the palace and soldiers on our borders, he let out a deep sigh. It is a troubling time. We appreciate your concerns. So, you probably know why we're here. Please enlighten us, Mr. Hawker. We know you are working on a new constitution. The Supreme Court does not approve of this. With all due respect, the constitution needs to be updated, sir. I am sure you are well aware of the public demand and our circumstances. Is that so? I see that you are the one who is not aware of our actual circumstances. You want to make a weaker constitution in the midst of problems from both inside and outside. Even if your proposal passes the Assembly, I will make sure it will not pass the Supreme Court. That much is clear. You haven't even seen the proposal yet, Mr. Hawker. Isn't it too soon to be against it? Do you think I live under a rock, Mr. President? I know what goes on. Yet you, Mr. President, seem to be the only partially informed about the current situation. Please let us explain the reasons of our stance. Let's hear it. We are protecting the Constitution because it works, Mr. President. It is efficient, and it gives you the authority to lead the nation with swift decisions. Swordland has more important problems and threats that we should face right now instead of nitpicking about some paragraphs of the Constitution. We have a potential war within our borders. Also signaled Heron with his hand to let him speak instead. Mr. President, I know that you're a busy man, so I'll make this quick. We all know that Swordland security forces found stashes of Rumburgian weaponry in the hideouts of Bludish separatists. KA-74s are roaming inside Swordland at this moment. As much as Rumburg poses a direct threat, now it's clear that they are also intervening in our country and weaponizing our minorities against us. It's not unprecedented to think that the Bloods will start their terror again with their new toys. Not to mention the fights that broke out between the left and right wing after the shooting of Bernard Circus. Communists are rising with the support of United Contana. The chaos is imminent for Swordland. And sadly, we don't see the administration taking the necessary precautions. You said you will not focus on military during your term. Under current circumstances, that cannot be tolerated at any cost. We are taking the necessary steps. No need to worry. We hope that our police forces and our military is adequately funded during these times of conflict. But regardless of that, are you also aware that the armed Bludish separatists have direct connections with the Workers' Party of Bludia? They claim otherwise. They may claim they have no ties to the separatists, but most of their members used to be part of them before they formed the Workers' Party of Bludia. How about the name, Mr. President? Is it not the Workers' Party of Swordland, is it? As far as I am aware, there is no nation called Bludia around here. What is this all about? The only reason they are not in the Assembly is because of the electoral threshold. They have gotten quite big. They are clearly getting outside help, and their connections to the paramilitary Bludish force cannot be denied. And all of a sudden, the reformists are trying to decrease the electoral threshold so that the Bludish separatists can be legitimized in the Assembly to achieve their aims of independence. You think that's Mr. Richter's intention? I suspect his intentions are grander, but I wish the only issue with the Bludish terrorists and Rumburg. The reformists suggested changes would also bring the communists, who are backed by United Contana, into the Assembly. Do you see the pattern yet? You're saying the reformists are working for foreign powers. Haven't you been briefed by your security team? Maybe you should suspect them as well. We should take the necessary measures against communist and Bludish plots, as well as increasing our military budget against a possible conflict with Rumburg. And of course, not fall into the traps of the reformists by listening to their demands. They are clearly plotting to weaken the president and our whole administration in order to exploit the situation. Which brings us to some very important information that we have. Definitely something you need to hear, and it can change absolutely everything. With all due respect, Mr. President, I think this is getting slightly ridiculous. Please explain, Mr. Hawker. One person in question is Mr. Franz Richter himself, the leader of the Reformists. We have enough information to infer that he has ties with Arcasia. Arcasia is aggressively growing their influence around the world, and now we have Mr. Richter coming up with these ridiculous demands for a new constitution amidst a chaotic period in Swordland. All the pieces seem to fit perfectly. That is why the Supreme Court will be doing what it takes to stop these reforms and preserve the constitution. And how would you know that Mr. Richter has ties to Arcasia? Mr. Gallade, we all know he has been in Arcasia many times because it's been documented. But what would you think if he has been making hidden flights to the country? Please explain. He has been spotted in a hotel in Arcasia last year where they held the Conference on Economic Development in Volatile Regions. Right around that time, he started to influence the masses into believing that our constitution is the reason for everything bad. His trip was not documented, nor was he an official guest of the conference. We believe that he had a meeting with President Walker behind closed doors. I also have a couple of more photos of him that were taken in Arcasia in different cities. One is from a couple of months back, again, none of it is documented. He also attended another event in Lesbia last week. The Arcasian Minister of Foreign Affairs was there too. This is true, this is big. I told you so, Mr. President. Many Solace were already following his leads for quite some time, Mr. President. I cannot give away their identities, but I can give you the evidence. He handed me a small file. It contained official documents from the Swordish Border Guard with highlighted dates that showed no trace of Franz Richter's name. There were clear photos of him that were taken in the conference in Arcasia, as well as remarks by Lesbian and Arcasian citizens who claimed to have seen him with Arcasian businessmen around the same dates. There was also an official transcript of one of his speeches where he claimed to be in Benfey on the dates of the conference in Arcasia, where he was spotted. Lucian skimmed through the documents with skepticism, which slowly turned into surprise. These seem to be real. Of course they are real, Mr. Gallade. These seem to suggest that Arcasia is behind the Reformists. Their demands will only benefit Arcasia. They want us to have a weaker administration while we face all these threats. This is clearly a plot against Swordland. I bet Rumburg is part of their plan too. This could not be a coincidence that they are weaponizing our minorities against us around the same time. Now you understand the reasons for our current stance, and also our suspicions about your advisors, who clearly have not given you this vital information. Lucian gave him a sharp look. We appreciate the information, Mr. Hawker, but I advise against jumping to conclusions right away. We still need to check the information. There is not much to think or check. This is clearly an emergency. In such cases, the Constitution gives the President the right to use his emergency powers. If we work together, you can be sure that the Supreme Court will not block your declaration of emergency. Let's talk about... You want me to declare an emergency? Of course, we cannot wait for the processes of the Assembly to take care of these issues. You must exercise your presidential powers for a fast and effective solution. Which means you might need to suspend parts of the Constitution to give more authority to our security forces to deal with these issues. We must officially investigate Mr. Richter as well. You can devise a strong security decree if you can base it on Articles 57 and 58, which gives the President the right to suspend parts of the Constitution to deal with national security threats. You can directly bypass the Assembly in such a situation. The only thing you need is the Supreme Court to allow the emergency to be declared, and you have our word on that. Mr. President, why don't we talk in private, only the two of us? We can devise a plan together. I know how we can use the Constitution to our advantage. It would be more effective if Mr. Glad and Mr. Gareth C. leave the room before we discuss it. I like your idea, but I'd rather plan it together. Glad to hear that we're on the same page, Mr. President, but I will have to insist on the private talk. Lucian? Sir, I can leave. I'm not here to block your cooperation with anyone. Then please go, Mr. Glade. Lucian stood up as Orso gave a smile. Heron paid his respects and left with Lucian, leaving me and Orso alone. If you stop the Reform Committee meetings immediately and focus on the real threat, I will guarantee you we will manage the Reformists together. You must eliminate these threats, both internal and external. An emergency act can help you do that. We cannot trust anyone in the administration either. According to Article 58, if public security and the order are seriously disturbed or endangered within the Republic of Swordland, the President of Swordland may modify and suspend parts of Constitution, subject to confirmation by the Supreme Court, to determine the validity of the declaration of a state of emergency. Can't the Assembly simply revoke it? According to the Constitution, only the President and the Grand National Assembly can revoke the emergency after it is declared. That is correct. However, as long as your party is in line, they will never have a majority to revoke it immediately. So no, they cannot simply revoke it. That is kind of a grey area. The Constitution states that no state shall, in the case of national emergency, modify or suspend the rights of freedom defined in Article 100 of the Constitution, unless actually invaded or in such imminent danger as will not admit of delay. Exactly. It can definitely be argued that we are under such imminent danger because of Rumburg. Not to mention United Contana's support for a communist coup in Swordland, as well as Friend Richard's involvement with Arcasia, which is definitely connected to all of these problems. And of course, that is up to the Supreme Court to decide, so that is not a problem. We may need increased surveillance on our political rivals to find out about their connections and plots. Bringing unlimited detention would allow you to arrest people as necessary, such as Mr. Richter. The information that I gave you can be enough, depending on what parts of the Constitution you'll modify. In an emergency, anything is possible, Mr. President. The Supreme Court will support your decisions. I won't be going ahead with this. I thought you wanted to plan our move. I just wanted to hear your plan, and now I've heard it. What is the meaning of this? You will instead push on with your reforms then? It seems you're also part of the conspiracy after all. I think we should end the meeting before we offend each other. I hope Swordland's future is not bleak. Good luck with your reforms, Mr. President. You made a big mistake. Goodbye, Mr. Hawker. Have a good evening. He left the room. I mean, I couldn't really turn around and demand, don't you dare leave on me, because I did tell him that we should end the meeting before we insult each other, so. Hawker in Maroon Palace. Chief Justice also Hawker has been spotted entering the Maroon Palace. Our sources are intrigued by the timing of this visit that is happening right after the increased conversations around the so-called democratic reform. And so, we actually have no news going on. We have a small moment of silence. That's a little bit mental. Let's continue. And I guess we'll see what happens next, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to move on. Trials of Democracy. Move on to the next stage. However, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are actually going to end the episode there. We have just moved on to the Trials of Democracy. There are many things I wish I could do, but unfortunately, of course, I am restricted by what is available in the game. I would love to investigate and potentially confront Franz Richter, because I can always put a stop to his thing, and if all of these bits of evidence are true, hey, things get leaked to the press every day. But, unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be able to do that, and so we'll simply have to see what happens in the next episode. Until then, as per always, thank you very much for joining me, and until we see you again, I hope that you can stay safe, happy, and healthy.